Now, there are
Morning,
many
John.
figures within the Labour Party who've been talking about fire and rehire practices for quite some time. Although it doesn't seem that that's particularly analogous in this case, because it's not the same workers being rehired. It's different agency staff. Are Labour trying to conflate two different issues today?
Not really, because I think the fire and rehire situation needs to be rectified anyway. And the government, of course, blocked a private member's bill to outlaw fire and hire not so long ago. This time, it'll be interesting if this comes to a vote today, how many Tory MPs vote with Labour on it. I think that's a distinct possibility. I mean, this has been a PR disaster for P&O Ferries and its parent company in Dubai, DB World. But whether they realise the degree of public outrage, I wonder. And I think hopefully we'll see a lot of British people voting with their feet, and with their wallets by using rival ferry operators.
It was interesting at the Conservative Party's spring conference over the weekend to see just how many cabinet ministers were really willing to use pretty harsh language about P&O, almost more condemnation on the way in which this was done. The pre-recorded Zoom call firing people with no notice. Do you think perhaps that the way in which it was done was potentially the largest problem here?
I think it's certainly a big part of the problem, although not entirely the problem. For once, I agreed with the Archbishop of Canterbury. I don't always agree with when he called it sinful as well as inhumane and unethical. And rather embarrassing, too, for, if you like, the Brexiteers, because DB World have taken advantage of the Brexit scenario. Having British seamen taken off by security guards armed with handcuffs and replaced by foreign agency workers, some of whom, it's said, are earning £1.80 an hour compared to the British legal wage of £8.91. I mean, this is hardly the great world of Brexit Unchained Britain that was sold, and I think government ministers have got to dig their heels in here.
But are we being a bit
World
too
are heavily involved in Freeport arrangements, and I think that they should be kicked out of any unless they do a U-turn, which seems unlikely at the moment, that they should be excluded from any of the Freeport deals.
I suppose that seems like it's a reasonable step to take, given that it wouldn't be banning a free action of a company, because I do worry here that potentially we're looking at this from only one side. Of course, the ferry industry has had a really torrid time, as many industries involved in travel have over the last 2 years. Clearly, it's not in a particularly healthy financial footing. Doesn't a company have a right to restructure, to say that parts of its business are too expensive to run and that without changes it might go out of business?
Well, there's one thing which struck me over the weekend is that DB World, the parent company, are spending £147 million sponsoring the European Golf Tour this year, but they still owe £146 million to the Merchant Seamen's Pension Fund, which they haven't paid. So I don't think this company exactly have a reputation that we should be defending at the moment.
But there is a fundamental point here, isn't there, that if we're going to restrict the actions of a company, potentially with some pretty heavy-handed regulation affecting how employers can fire people. I think there's a relative amount of research showing that sort of banning people from firing people can often lead to just more bankruptcies of companies, and actually everyone gets fired in the end anyway. Is there a worry that we might be leaning too heavily onto trying to regulate something that, whilst it's a desperately sad situation, potentially there were no good answers here?
I don't think so, because you have to look at it in the context of the deep pockets of DB World. And let's not forget that P&O Ferries received somewhere between 10 and 15 million in furlough money during the pandemic, which I hope the government will be trying to explore ways of, of clawing back. Plus the fact is that this company may well, it's an arguable point because some of the vessels are registered in Cyprus and the Bahamas, but that they seem to have broken the law potentially on failing the required consultation process when you are imposing mass sackings as opposed to individual sackings. I think there's going to be a legal fight over this, which the government have given them until 5 p.m. tomorrow to explain themselves, while government lawyers are consulting on whether this is legal, illegal, or what. But the trouble with that is that any legal challenges are going to take weeks or months, and then there'll probably be an appeal. So we could be looking at a couple of years before there's any legal resolution to this, which is why today in Parliament really matters. And I think there could be quite a cross-party consensus today in Parliament, Tom.